that a little bit, but everything I talk about, this was kind of an impromptu thing, so we're just going to kind of go through it, but it relates to all of sailing. And, it'll relate to the Ultimate 20, an Olsen 30, a Santa Cruz 70. It doesn't matter. The basics are all the same. So we'll kind of get through it. I don't know what order these are in. So if you want to try, Sean, just popping one up and we'll just kind of shoot in a direction that it takes us.
I'm going to share my screen, and you can sort of yell and tell me what picture looks good to you. Do you see that, Steve?
Yeah, go ahead and go to the start. I guess we'll just use that. We kind of saw it earlier, some of us. Okay, so.
Go ahead, you have control over my cursor.
Does it go, okay. Does it go full screen or no? It'll just stay like that, I guess.
I'll make it as big as I can. Keep talking, and I'll make it get bigger.
Yeah, if you look down there at those icons on the bottom right, you can scroll that. Yeah.
Kind of pixelates it a little bit. That's okay. It's not the best quality, but that's fine. So, we're talking about Flying Scots. They are unique in a lot of ways. The biggest thing is they have a very wide sheeting angle on the jib, which means basically that the clew is positioned pretty far outboard. The Flying Scot is inherently a very wide boat, right? And so that said, the way that the jib tracks are set up, they're really far outboard. And so sailing upwind in a Flying Scot can be a challenge. Luckily, they're very easy boats to set up. That's, basically 2 shrouds and a headstay. No backstays, no spreaders, no lowers, no diamonds, no anything like that to mess with. So, it is relatively easy to set up. I think there are some, pretty common numbers amongst all the sailmakers now for rake and rig tensions. It's kind of a more advanced side, but in general, the Flying Scot you can see here, it's definitely wide. You can see the jibs on a couple of these boats here. So 2324, the boat nearest to you. If you can notice, he's basically not on the wind, but what are his sails? His sails are trimmed to be way on the wind, right? If you notice, I'll just kind of use it. Can you guys see my cursor? Is it around the clew of the jib?
Yes.
See that there? Okay. If you notice, he's pointed away from the wind, but yet his jib is in really hard and cross-sheeted very hard. So when I say cross-sheet, and noting that the boat is wide, we put a little bit of cross-sheet on to pull that clew further inboard and increase our sheeting angle on the jib. And so what's happened here is this guy, 2324, he's got this set up and cross-sheeted really hard, but he's pointed the boat away from the wind, thereby making the jib over-trimmed. And, the boat's obviously heeling over. They're not flattening the boat. The main's in pretty hard, you can see here, because it's just going to the rudder head. There's not a whole lot of main sheet distance there. So the few things that I look at here, the jib over-trimmed, main's pretty tight, boat's heeled over a lot, and the boat's not going to weather. The 5432 up here, looks like a dark blue boat. You notice his boom's a lot higher, so he's eased on the main. His jib looks more normal, probably not oversheeted, and yet he's going, 10 degrees higher than this guy, 15 degrees than 2324. He's actually sailing on the wind after this. I'm guessing it was a start. So, 5432 up here obviously has a good start position-wise, assuming he wasn't over early, but he's trimmed to go upwind. 2324 down here is not. He's trimmed to go upwind, but he's not going upwind. I don't know if that kind of makes sense to everyone. Sails are trimmed too hard. Boat is too far away from the wind, right? Kind of a common thing. One of the big giveaways is the fact that he's heeled over so much, right? Because the sails are capturing so much wind and they're not using it efficiently. It's basically like being broadside to the wind and pulling everything in, which is not efficient, not proper sailing. So just something to kind of keep in mind, when the boat heels over like this abnormally, start thinking about certain things like that. Am I over trimmed? Am I just too far off the wind? We went sailing on a J30 yesterday, just a real quick story. And it was, kind of tight reaching, almost sailing to weather. And the boat was heeling over a lot. And it's an inherent thing because the mains are so big, and the Flying Scot the same way. The main is over proportionate for what the boat is. And so if it's over trimmed a little bit, or if you're off the wind just a little bit, the boat takes on that heat, that excessive heel. So the two things to get rid of it are to flatten the boat and or ease the sails. One of those two things, or both actually, are probably right. But that's the direction you need to start looking in, is easing the sails or getting the boat up on the wind and letting it feather to relieve some of that sideways pressure on the sails, if that makes sense. Okay. Any questions on that? I mean, it's pretty straightforward, I think, right? A pretty good example, I think.
Looks like he has helm too, tiller deflection.
Yeah, for sure. You got to when you're heeled over that much. Okay, you know what? While we're talking about it, find one of I can't do it. Sean, see if you can find one of the boats with the funny hull shape. While we're talking about, yeah, let me 5688. That's fine down there on the bottom. Yeah. Can you click on that? Okay. So in talking about the Flying Scot being an awkward boat, I don't know. I don't know if this is Kelly, and I don't think so. Anyway, here's a good example of what the boat, you can see the shadow underneath. Let me see here. Okay, I think I have the arrow again, right? Under the bow?
Yep.
Okay. So you can see the shadow, how it rings out on the bottom of the boat, right? So these boats, I mean, obviously, when they were designed, it was meant to be an easy, stable boat. So with that said, you can notice how wide and fat and kind of odd shaped it is, right? That's why it's imperative that you try to sail these boats as flat as possible. Well, and I'll show you another picture, but it's because this is so wide for so long that you don't pick up stability as the boat heels over. Normally sailboats, as they heel over, more hull goes in the water and increases stability. But with the Flying Scot, it doesn't necessarily work that way. It just adds drag. And so you want to try to keep these as flat as possible, just for the reason of looking at this. This is kind of, I don't even know how to equate it to an animal, but it's kind of a platypus type shape, maybe. I don't know, something like that. They're awkward boats, but then again, they're fun boats. So let's see. There's another one, Sean, from in front, I think.
Okay.
See if it might be the one above that, perhaps. Yeah. So same thing here, the shadows, kind of bouncing off the water a little bit. Oh, okay, that's good enough. Here you can see it's really defined how the entry to the Flying Scot is really fine, but then very quickly it picks up a bunch of beam in the very bow of the boat, right? And then once you get out here to the little bulge, it goes straight up, okay? And so that's what I'm talking about in terms of the boat heeling over. It doesn't pick up form stability is what it's called. So form stability is when from the water line up, it's actually flared out, okay? Making the boat essentially wider. And what that does is as the boat heels over on a flared boat, it picks up form stability. The Flying Scot just pushes this big bulge down further into the water. If you watch like commercial boats, tankers, stuff like that, they'll put that big bulb on the bow, and that's to break the water before it hits the hull and kind of ease the surface tension along the hulls because they're so big and so full. In a perfect world, you'd probably want to put one on a Flying Scot, just so that way the water didn't have to just hit all this and stick to it. But this is a good example of seeing that, once again, it's kind of a big scallop right here, and then it just goes straight up. So anytime the boat heels over, it's just pushing this further down into the water, just increasing drag and not helping it. So that's kind of like why rule 1 is to always sail these boats really flat, okay?
And Steve, when you say shoves that big fat part in the water, of course you mean on the leeward side.
On the leeward side, right, yeah. It's, obviously it's the mirror image of this, and you think about it, that's way down in here. I mean, making that boat really thick to the water, not really efficient. So being flat and getting this as flat as possible is making the water do the least amount of effort to get around your boat.
Gotcha.
Not really sail trim, but just kind of Flying Scot specific, you know, always being flat. 420, very similar, you know, for the high schoolers. You know, the boat gets really, really round really quick. That's why it's imperative to really, otherwise you think about it, you know, you're just putting a bunch of frontal area into the water, which is like, you know, a snow plow. So the more you can relieve that, the better off you are. Okay.
Steve, in that example, how do you suggest addressing that healing? Is it, you know, heading up higher? Is it easing the sails? Is it moving body weight?
So on the Flying Scot, the board is very inefficient. Okay, it's a symmetrical shape, if you will, for lack of a better term. It's, some would argue it's not really symmetrical, but it's not like a NACA foil. Okay, the draft isn't far forward, creating lift as you're increasing drag, and the flat rudder obviously on the Flying Scot doesn't help anything. So with those two surfaces being, for lack of a better term, flat and not aerodynamic or fluid dynamic, you want to try to keep them in the water as 90 degree to the water. So easing the sail, right, is going to be the first thing to do, right, because that's going to help flatten the boat. Hiking hard is going to be the next thing, and then using your sail trim to get your airfoils flatter and more efficient. Heading up, yes. However, heading up in a Flying Scot doesn't do a lot of good because you're not maintaining your lift, because your foils are imperfect, okay? On a boat that has nice foils, you can get away with a little bit of pinching like that because your foils are helping to keep you upwind, right? The foils on the Flying Scot are not. They're just simply there to provide lateral resistance. And so that being said, the more you have in the water, the more you're going to be able to keep that height, if you will. So easing the sails, flattening the boat, keep the boards in the water, which provide more surface to fight against the sails, keeping you more to weather when you're sailing to weather, okay?
So Steve, a question on the chat says, how does that jive with the usual advice, not just at the sailing center, but everywhere else for leeward heel? And I think what they're really referring to is the boat almost never upwind wants to be sailed perfectly flat, but pretty doggone flat, but I don't know, 5, 6, 7 degrees or something like that. You're saying just excessive heel is a big no-no, but I think you would probably agree that some gentle heel going upwind, whatever it takes to balance the helm is just right. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so a Flying Scot with the oversized main like that is it's a fairly quick boat to get overpowered. And so when I'm saying a flat boat, I'm probably thinking in my mind 5 degrees is actually a flat boat. You're never going to get it perfectly flat unless it's not windy. And so I guess kind of what your question might be is that if you're inducing heel, like in light air, you're trying to help the sails, okay? You're trying to help your sails with an angle of attack to the wind, okay? That's why we're heeling the boat. Helping, you know, having gravity hold your sails out, hold the boom out. It's not necessarily to get the boat out of the water, okay? We still want to keep the foils in the water because they're the only thing keeping you up. But you're doing it more for sail shape and sail trim and to create a little bit of helm in the boat. Because in light air, you don't have helm necessarily, especially with the flat blade. So you want to induce a little bit of heel, 5 or 10 degrees, not a lot. But once it's windy enough, you want to try to be as flat as possible. The only reason you don't sail perfectly flat or over flat is because it feels really, really weird. You know, it's a very uncomfortable feeling as a skipper, I know. You know, sailing that flat, I really don't like it. One of the reasons why I don't sail a lot of Flying Scots anymore, not too much. But it was hard to get used to that. You know, laser's the same way. A laser, you want to sail flat all the time. So that's, you know, that's in terms of that leeward heel, it's mainly in lighter air. Otherwise, you're not going to want to do that. You're going to decrease a little bit of wetted surface within a couple of degrees, but not a lot. So it's it's better to actually get the transom out than anything else if you want to decrease wetted surface by changing the angle of the hull in the water.
To kick that horse a little more, you mentioned inducing a little helm. You mentioned to affect the sail shape, which I assume heeling the boat would drape them into position with gravity. But also that picture we're looking at right now, the pretty nice shot of the slot in light air. That slot can close off with a flat boat, so the heel opens that up. Is that something you agree with?
Correct. Yeah. And so that's why, we're still kind of cross sheeting in light air. But depending on where your rig's set up, you guys are all 2-to-1 on all your jib sheets, right? At the sailing center?
It's pretty much 1-to-1.
Oh, you're 1-to-1. Okay.
Yeah.
So that being said, one cleat width of a release or in is a lot. So yeah, that slot closes quickly because the sails are designed to be as long as they can on the leech just to increase sail area. But with a fixed lead, basically, you're set up to where a little bit goes a long way with those jib sheets. So yeah, you can close the slot too quickly. You're right.
Yeah, and
we'll kind of see that on some of the others.
Yeah, we sure will. A lot of the guys at the sailing center, when we get off this call and we get back to sailing, they're going to be like, well, Steve didn't say, I've got to make sure everything I say jives with what you say because I'll never hear the end of it. Okay, so when in doubt, I would listen to Steve. And by the way, I do.
When in doubt, let it out.
Yeah. One of the questions on chat was, can you talk a little bit about balancing the helm with sail trim?
Okay, so it's kind of straightforward, right? As the boat heels over and increases helm, and so all of a sudden you're doing pull-ups with the tiller extension as the boat heels over. You flatten the boat, the helm goes away. A little bit easier on the tiller. How do you do that? Same thing. You either hike harder or you let the sails out, okay? Or like you had a comment earlier about, kind of letting the boat feather up a little bit. Normal on a big boat, yes, absolutely. On a big boat, on a keel boat with a Genoa or something like that, you just let the boat feather because you have momentum and you had foils working. On the Flying Scot, to a certain degree, yes, but the boat, it'll only go from 3.2 to 3.5 knots upwind by feathering. And so that little bit of difference is not going to help you. So you just need to go fast. You just need to hike harder, ease the sail a little bit. The jib, not more than a cleat width, more than likely. And we'll talk about jib trim here in a second. But usually the main is probably 3 or 4 inches. And depending on the breeze, obviously, the windier it is, the more you're going to have to, play with the main sheet. In light air, we'll look at a couple of mainsails, but in light air, the same thing. You're going to have to be easing and playing, and as you ease, the tiller walks out of your hand. As you sheet in, you have to pull the tiller to you more when you're sitting on the high side.
So to summarize, a couple of huge takeaways. You're not saying anything different than any other pro, and that is when there's helm in a Flying Scot, that rudder is a nightmare. It doesn't offer you any benefits. There's no benefit to deflection of that tiller. So get rid of your helm any way you can, and the main is obviously the most likely suspect.
Right. So depowering the boat will help take the helm out of it.
And one of the questions we got via email earlier today was Dave Saperstein couldn't make the call, so he asked, and we don't have to answer at this moment, but when do you shift gears from footing to pointing and then pointing back to footing? And I figured there are probably about 5 different reasons why you would shift that gear, but he was mostly interested in sea state, like if you're coming up on waves, chop, slop, boat wake, whatever. And
that's going to be, it's tough in a Flying Scot because you get the oil can effect, especially in chop. The bow is so wide up there, and there's really no stiffening in the boat to help that, or not much at least. And so, in chop, you are kind of oil canning a bit. which means when you hit a wave, you feel a bit of a shudder in the floor of the boat. Older boats will have it more than a newer boat, obviously, being a little bit softer. But, you know, that's kind of the pinching and footing is you know, it's more of a tactical thing. Yeah, you know, when a puff hits you, you want to be closer to the wind instead of further away from the wind. So that way you're letting the boat feather and depower if you're not going to get to it first. Let's be honest, you know, not a lot of us, you know, we can see some of the big puffs, but not some of the little puffs. And so we don't know that the puff is on us until all of a sudden we feel it and the boat starts to heel over. Okay, so the easiest thing to do is just kind of get to that first state of, okay, how do I flatten the boat? You know, because the puff's going to tell us that it's here, so we're already late. You know, so if you want to be closer to the wind, so you're quicker to feather when that puff hits you. The flip side to it is, you know, when a puff hits, if it's a header, it's going to be okay because you're going to kind of get, it's a natural feather, if you will. If it's a lift and all of a sudden the puff hits you, let's say broadside almost, the boat's going to immediately feel that and want to tip over. And that's when you have to be quick on the sheets because you don't want to have to steer too much with that flat blade back there. It's more of a brake than a blade. So you want to kind of be closer to the wind than not. So that's kind of the footing versus pointing. Footing, you're obviously going to, you know, ease everything a little bit and go faster. You're probably going to heel over a little bit more. So you have to hike harder, which is going to help you go faster too. So.
And Dave Rink and I, I'll get to another picture shortly. Dave Rink and I and Saperstein, we all had our Scots out a few days back, a few times over the weeks. And we were looking, I was trying to go really high to see if I couldn't survive off the starting line mode. And I think Dave was overwhelmingly more successful low and fast. And it kind of reminded me for about the 180th time in a Flying Scot, when in doubt, if you can, foot. It's not a sexy boat that like a U-20 or something that can go real high. It's more of a, when in doubt, keep your boat speed because it decelerates pretty quickly with that hull shape that you described.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's like I was talking about. So your boards, you know, your boards aren't helping you. So that's why you can't slow the boat down. As soon as you slow the boat down, the boat will go sideways to leeward. So that's why you say your fallback is always to go faster. You know, in comparison, it's all in relative.
Yeah.
But you want to go faster in order to stay up because your boards aren't going to help you stay up by themselves.
Okay, so yeah, okay, so there's a premium on boat speed to overcome all of these negatives associated with the boat architecture.
So go ahead and go to the light air, picture there, the boats.
The
Above
okay.
that. Yeah, there you go.
Kind
of more,
they're a little small, aren't they?
Yeah, more in line with, you know, kind of sailing here on Lake Norman, looks like, right?
Yeah,
They're both
sure.
sitting in on the seats. So this guy right here, this is my buddy Tom McNally. He sails with his brother. Very, very good sailor. Very, you would have no idea that he's a good sailor. He's come a long way in a short amount of time, but you know, you wouldn't think it. But he's gotten really smart about the way he sails. He has an old boat. Like I said, he sails with his brother. You know, not totally serious about it, but really good at it. And so you can see here, he's kind of the only one that's got the main pretty tight. And, you know, it's hard to say what the jib looks like. Can you see my hand or no?
Yes.
On the screen? Okay. Hard to say what the jib is doing, but obviously his main is trimmed a lot harder than anybody else in this picture. The next one would probably be, you know, maybe this guy right here, but he's holding his lane because obviously he has a boat to leeward. And then you can see the angle of his boat compared to the one behind. Whoever, I'm not sure, whoever this is here, a lower angle, of course, right? So aimed, you know, more to this direction. Tom over here with a little bit more main sheet on, kind of headed up here, you know, higher, trying to lift up off of the boat to leeward of him. One thing I found from Jeff and Amy Linton, some of the best in the Flying Scot fleet, one of the quick things I learned in light air from them was don't worry about your leech being a little bit too tight. the boat will use it to its advantage in light air. Yes, there is obviously a line of diminishing returns. However, in light air like this, when you're both kind of just barely sitting up and not hiking, you can go ahead and give it just a click more, over trim on it, because it'll help keep your height. And this is a good example of Tom keeping his height right here. It's hard to say with boat speed, but chances are, I'm guessing he probably did okay, just staying right in through here. And this guy, whatever 92 is here, I'm sure within another 30 or 40 seconds was probably a boat length and a half or two to leeward of Tom and further back. So this is kind of that footing and pointing. Tom is obviously in pointing mode, a little bit tight of a leech, and just using a perfectly flat boat to just try to crawl to weather as much as possible. You can see another, this guy down here, obviously he's sheeted really hard, but he's still way off the wind. He's got the guy sitting to leeward, inducing a little bit of heel, but over trimmed and not up on the wind like he should be. So I don't know if y'all can see it. It's kind of a little bit fuzzy, but you can see the difference obviously in the leech of the mains. This is fairly open, and this is definitely a little bit closed, and it's showing in the boat, in the angle of the boats, right? Any questions about this picture?
Yeah, I guess if the boat is already rolling and you're able to sheet hard, hook the leech like that and kind of survive, and that's your friend Tom McNally's in that, keeping alive on that hip of that leeward boat, he's has to trim hard like that. I'm a little, so you can get away with it. The water's pretty flat. They're sitting on the windward rail, so there's not light air, but I guess I would, if I'm trying to survive, maybe it's a mistake, but I would have a tendency to heel the boat a little more than that. And I guess the mistake there is the wetted surface issue. I'm plowing that big fat left cheek in the water.
It's the same thing. Yeah, it's increasing your wetted surface, and it's basically taking your boards out of a 90-degree angle to where you want to go.
Okay.
Like I said, you have to use your boards as much as possible since they're so inefficient.
And that boat in that mode, pretty flat, pretty cranked on main, the helm's gonna be very, very neutral, I would suspect, and kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah, very much so. And that at that point, you kind of start scooching your butt in a little bit, just for that reason. You want to heel the boat over and put a little bit of helm in it, because it's not quite really windy enough. You can see this kind of, I don't know, green or blue boat, whatever he is. He's heeled over more. He's probably definitely powered up, and so he's probably in that footing or squeeze mode right now. It's hard to say wherever the line was, but it's just something that I learned, and it was a good little tip. To just go ahead and don't worry so much about that top telltale stalling. Excuse me. On the main, just go ahead and use that height mode, if you will, by squeezing that main in a little bit tighter.
You mentioned Jeff Linton, who's I think 4 or 5 time national champion in the Flying Scot, 2-time Rolex winner. 2-time or 1 time? 1 time. 1 time Rolex winner. Anyway, only one, huh?
Yeah.
They are big on the return on the leech. A lot of good sailors talk a lot about the return of the sail at the back end and the value that it provides you. Is this a good time for you to talk about what the leech does for you in terms of pushing the boat up?
Yeah, that's fine. We can go to one of my sails, 5755. And let me make one point on this with Tom. He has that main squeezed in, and you might be asking, well, what about the jib? Well, you don't really over trim the jib in order to go higher upwind. Okay, that's not. I don't want to mislead you here at all. It's not like you just pull your sails in harder and you go higher and faster. You don't. There's a trade-off for sure. But your main is it is the elevator button, if you will. The jib is not. The jib is pulling you forward. The main is allowing you to stay higher. Okay, So even that jibs or that main is trimmed in a little bit hard, it's not like you automatically pull the jib in. Keep your jib settings to where you like them. Usually that top telltale on the leech flowing most of the time. Last thing you want to do is stall the leech of that jib, especially when you're already kind of artificially staying high and effectively going slower. Okay.
But living. And that's common off a starting line. The sailing center has a dozen mains and a dozen jibs, brand new, generously donated by an anonymous donor. And Steve came to the center weeks ago and showed us how to stencil them. And they look really good. And so we will have telltales on the top batten of the main and also on the top batten on the jib. So that top batten on the jib that he said, keep it flowing and don't over trim your jib, don't choke your slot. Those telltales will, the main telltales at the top batten will, I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about them. So for all you sailing center guys, look forward to seeing some telltales, which is pretty cool.
Hey, when you're talking about the main point being your elevator button, is that true for the 420s also?
Absolutely, yeah. It's the same for everything, right? Your main is hooked to the mast, so it's your most immediate reactionary device, if you will. So yeah, that's directly affecting. I call it the elevator button. I don't know how else to describe it, but when I say if we want to head up, that's the first thing to do is that main comes in.
All the pros talk about the leech of the main as the flaps. And when they want to go high, they'll extend the flaps and bend the leech around and either do it with main sheet or vang or both. And as a former pilot, that is definitely a good analogy. You get more lift, but there is more drag. So you're going to go a little slower, but you're going to go higher. I like that analogy a lot. And it even looks like a flap, that last batten's worth of length there. It's a pretty nice analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a question here. Do you want to have the leech of the jib mimic the shape of the main? More of a statement, because I think that's absolutely true.
So yeah, that's the slot, okay, if you will. You don't focus on that. You don't try to, you don't take a mental picture and say, okay, that looks like this. I want to make this one look like exactly. You want to just get that slot right. It's basically, you want to follow the contours, if you will. The leeward side of the main, obviously, you don't want any closer to the leech of the jib in any certain areas. You get pretty fancy when you start talking about apparent wind angles and angle of attacks and how much deflection. I mean, you can get a bit overbearing. But yes, you do want them to be similar. You don't want them to you don't want them to be abnormal at all. But it's that slot effect. It's the distance between the mast or the leeward side of the sail, rather, the mainsail, and the leech of the jib. And so, right now you're going to get a big bubble in the mainsail because the jib is sheeted tight. And so it's actually pushing the wind. It's closing that slot, pushing that wind on the backside of that mainsail. A little bit is okay, not necessarily a lot. And so as soon as you crack this jib, probably an inch or two, all of a sudden this bubble would half disappear between the leeward side of the main and the leech of the jib. Just for the simple fact that the leech opens up on the jib and it doesn't push the air back into the mainsail. Okay.
Is it fair to say that the slot is a nozzle that accelerates the air for the back of the main, thus helping the main become a better sail, kind of like a best supporting actor of sorts?
Absolutely, absolutely. It increases the velocity, if you will. Same thing, you always use a garden hose as an example. You put that little knob on the end of it that funnels down, and what happens? Your water pressure goes through the roof. All of a sudden, you can spray a stream, 20 feet, that when it just comes out of the big nozzle, or the hose end, it'll go 3 feet. So yeah, you increase the velocity. So it's the same thing. You're squeezing it, So the jib, that slot, is basically squeezing the air through there, accelerating it around the leeward side of the main.
So on this boat we're looking at right now, if you were in a rib, you would tell them do what right now with that over-eased main, assuming they're racing?
Yeah, in this instance, it's probably not necessarily on the wind. So I'm guessing the jib's probably just over trimmed. You know, by looking at the boat behind him, he's kind of the same angle, but the sails are eased a lot more. So I think what's happening is that they're just over trimmed and they're actually close reaching, not sailing upwind. So yeah, it's basically depower the boat. First thing you do is ease the sails, main and jib, or flatten them out or hike harder. Yep.
Gotcha. How about, maybe it's time for this slide, maybe?
Sure. Okay.
Right. Whoa.
So here we are with a nice looking Flying Scot main. You know, obviously there's two examples. The nice open leech at the top. Let's see here. Nice open leech on this. And actually, I'll show you another picture in here in a second. Nice open leech. Telltale is flying here. The top telltale on a big fractional rig, a 420, a Flying Scot, a Thistle, the Ultimate 20. You know, fractional rigs that have a jib that only go 3/4 of the way up. The sail from the main sail from the hounds up to the masthead can be totally different than the shape from the hounds to the deck. Okay, simply because of what we were just talking about, the slot factor of the jib, accelerating the air over the back. You know, up at the top, it doesn't have that benefit of the air being funneled over the backside. And so what happens is you can actually sheet this a little bit more. The hard wing sails that you're looking at on like the AC boats and stuff that they did have, you would notice that they would actually open the top leeches, essentially, you know, I don't know how you'd explain it, but kind of rotate them out, allowing, because the apparent wind is so different up top than it is when you change it with the jib. So that being said, I don't mind stalling the top telltale on a fractional rig boat 80% of the time. You know, it's not normally a good protocol on a masthead boat with a Genoa that goes all the way to the top. I almost never would. However, you can get away with it on a fractional rig boat, and the tendency is to look at the second one down. And I think on all of Sean's sails that he got, we've left the second telltale on just for that reason. This has to be flowing all the time. This one you really don't want stalled too much, but the top telltale, gosh, it can stand to be stalled a little bit. So in that instant, with that being said, you look at this, the bottom sail, and here it is. The leech is very closed off, right? Oversheeted, if you will, just a little too tight. You know, the leech is almost making a straight line from the masthead to the end of the boom. Even the second telltale is wrapped around the leeward side because the air is stalling. It has no velocity over the front side of the sail or the back side for that matter. And so what's happened is it sucked both telltales in there, being over trimmed a little bit, right? This is a very nice looking sail. And if your sail looks like that all the time sailing upwind, you're going to be pretty good. If you look like this, you know, you got to start working on a couple of your tuning tools. And number one being ease the sheet, probably about 2 or 3 inches to get it to look like this.
And that bottom, when good sailors like yourself talk about, oh, you can see that leech is really nice and open, I got to be honest. Yeah, I would also say it looks more open than the other one, but it is not glaringly obvious to me. And I know a lot of people at the Sailing Center and probably across the board would have to be coached on what they're looking for. And I think if I could use this technology better, I could draw a line from the tip of the mast to the tip of the boom and demonstrate the straightness of that leech. Is the openness of the leech or the sag or the twist Can you elaborate a little bit on what open leach means?
Okay, so and the one good way to kind of see this and judge it is the boom. For instance, let's just say it's the bottom of the screen here. Okay, so it's not, but let's just say it's that angle. Look at this batten, the angle of it compared to the boom. Okay, this batten right here is rotated to weather, right? At the top picture, let's say the boom is the bottom of the picture. This batten is closer to parallel, if you will, to this being the boom, right? So your telltale. It's not wrong use of telltale, but this is essentially matched up with your boom. Okay, this is over rotated. This leech is too tight and hooked, and the battens are all kind of the elevator flap. You can do it for a little bit, but not a lot. It's over parallel, if you will. Okay, these battens are closer to being parallel with the boom. If you're always over parallel, you're probably a little bit too tight, and then your telltales will tell you that.
So if you were, I don't know, a friend of mine is trimming pretty hard and isn't getting height he wants, and he's frustrated, and it could be that he just needs to ease the mane a little bit, get the speed, and let the board take him up, and quit trying to over trim the sail. The trimming the sail is not always the cure-all for sailing higher, because you lose speed.
Right, and ultimately speed equals height.
Yeah, that my friend is me, by the way. So there's a tendency for me to want to always trim harder and go higher, and that's nice. But Dave Rink, for example, when I watch him sail at the sailing center and in his new boat too, if anything, he tends to be a little under trimmed on the main. But the benefit of that is he's always going fast as hell, and then when he needs to, he can crank it on and go up. But he's never getting slow, and it's easy to see from a Boston whaler standing straight up. I can just look at it. It's like a seminar going on right in front of my face, and you can just see he's a little more ease than most people, but sailing as higher or higher, and it's because he's got more speed, I believe. So this kind of speaks to that.
So one thing to note, and kind of goes back to what the question was earlier about mimicking the leech profiles. By no means does the leech of the jib look like the leech of this main, okay? Especially, it may actually look more like this main because the jibs can be over trimmed relatively easily. But in terms of mimicking, yeah, you don't think that the leech of the jib over here is gonna look like this. We use the term loosely in order to get that slot right, but they're not going to mimic each other, if you would, distance to distance. So.
Gotcha. What's this one? What's this one for? We kind of already addressed it a little bit. Whoops.
Whoa, it gets bad, doesn't it?
Gets a little fuzzy.
So we talked about jib cross sheeting, okay? This is what we're doing. Let's see. Okay, I think you can see me here. So the weather sheet here in this 2-to-1 jib sheets, first of all, which helps a little bit because the lead, you're allowed 2 inches from the edge of this combing to the bearing surface of this jib lead block to come inboard. The reason we allow this is to allow the sheeting angle to move in towards the center of the boat. This person actually has a mark on the deck that they like to line their foot up with. So it's just kind of a visual reference that they know that this is kind of where they want the foot of their jib in line. So right now, if you were to release the weather sheet, this clew would move out probably 2, maybe 2.5 inches, thereby taking the sail plan and moving it to the left away from the wind, which is not what we want. So the one benefit in the 2-to-1 is obviously that you can make smaller adjustments, but the other one is the fact that you're able to kind of cheat this lead inboard a little bit. That's why we set the blocks up to pull in as much as we can. And then to accentuate that, you pull the weather sheet, which is why they have little pigtails here. So that way you can pull in line more so than moving just the clue. So it kind of stays at the right height. You're not manipulating it up or down. All you're trying to do is move it inboard. So that's the one effect to 2-to-1, jib sheets on the Flying Scots.
And the cross sheeting fundamentally is because the slot is abnormally wide
So
on a
wide.
Flying Scot.
Exactly, yeah. So what we're doing is we're utilizing the tools that we can to try to modernize the boat or make it better. And so you still have to abide by the rules, which is fine. And so this is just the one way that we kind of manipulate it a little bit to make it a little bit better. The angle changes, if you're side by side with somebody that isn't cross sheeted, you definitely know it. Is it 1 or 2 degrees? Yeah. Is it, if you're sailing by yourself, do you know it? Not really. It's only when you line up next to somebody that's not doing it that then you realize it makes a difference.
The cross sheeting, besides making the slot more symmetrical in the bottom third, I believe the cross sheeting also makes the jib more powerful, more round, and balances therefore the helm. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So the Flying Scot, we all have our leads at the very forwardmost part of the track. If we could move the tracks forward, we would, but we can't. So what we do is we leave the jib cars all the way forward to get that lead as far forward as we can, because what happens is we're already borderline on pulling the clue back too much between the tack and the clue. And so what it does is it makes the bottom of the sail just too flat. And so by cross sheeting this little bit, you notice that if we undid the cross sheet, the clue would go out, increasing the distance between the tack and the clue, okay? And when that increases, what does it do? It pulls tighter.
Flattens.
And so what it does is it goes flatter. So what we've done is by cross sheeting here is you've taken the clue, hopefully at the same height, because you're adjusting the leech, up here, and you've moved it in, thereby putting a little bit of round back in the bottom of the sail, a little bit of more sail shape in the bottom, getting the power, if you will, back into it.
You cross sheet on the U20?
So it's a mixed bag. Some people do. We tried it a little bit. Sometimes it does work. I don't know. The difference being on the Ultimate, you have plenty of car positioning. You can put the leech wherever you want it. So you don't need it as much. But we definitely experimented with it a little bit, and I don't know that we used it in Kansas quite a bit. I don't know that we used it when we were here on Lake Norman as much, but I had redesigned the sail at that point, so it was a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, normally on most boats you probably don't cross sheet all that much. If the clue comes past the mast too much, you won't cross sheet, because as you pull the weather sheet, all you're doing is pulling the clue forward, because it's basically, the mast is like acting like a block. And so if your jib comes back too far past the mast, then you're essentially pulling it forward, and that's not doing you any good. So the Flying Scot's almost borderline being almost too far back. That's why we put the pigtail on.
On the J88, Jim Hill, is there a car that slides in and out, an in-hauler, I imagine, on a fancy
So
boat?
they have a bearing or a block, basically a barber hauler, if you will. And so the barber hauler takes care of that. Yeah, you definitely, same thing. Tracks are in one spot, and they have to be in one spot on that boat. You can't move them. And so what they allow you to do is have an artificial system, i.e. a barber hauler, to then manipulate, the sheeting angle, if you will. But you can't be too tight. You definitely can't just keep pulling it. It's not like the more you pull, the better off you are. Absolutely not. There is a line of diminishing returns, and it's actually not very much on the Flying Scot, surprisingly. Like I said, it's probably 2 inches. Is a lot.
At the sailing center, we don't have seat sheeting on all the boats. Sometimes it just goes straight back. When it's seat sheeted, like you said, it comes in a couple inches already, does most of your inhauling for you. And some of our sails, mains and jibs, are older and donated and a bit tired, and they're already pretty round and powerful, and there's only so much you can do. You just can't sail that high. So I don't want people at the sailing center just go slamming on the cross sheeting. Play with it. You can play with it. And
Well, find another shot of the leech of the jib somewhere, Sean.
Oh, right.
I think I had a couple in there. They might be hanging up in the loft, maybe. Yeah, so just grab a couple of those, yeah, jib shots. Okay, so this is just hanging up in my loft at the shop. This is a Flying Scot jib. This might have been one of the first ones I had. So I'm using gravity to basically take place of the wind. It's not a perfect system, but you can kind of get a general idea of most sails. You know, the difference being that this is pulled fairly tight, not a lot of headstay sag, if you will, which a Flying Scot you will get quite a bit of. But primarily focusing on the leech, you can see, you know, this is an older sail, so it is kind of a little bit stretched out back here. But you can see right here a lot of sails, and I want to say that your new sails, Sean, have a contrasting stripe.
They do.
On the top batten. Okay. So that's a good way of utilizing the contrasting stripe on the batten to judge when you're over trimmed or not. There will be a telltale on the back accompanying that batten. And so that will be your biggest tool in deciding whether or not you're over trimmed or under trimmed. Well, you'll know if you're under trimmed because it'll be flying all the time. But this batten, it creates a hinge right here, right? So we talk about the leech of the sails. The older a sail gets, the worse this hinge gets. And I think the picture next to this, Sean, might be even worse than this, believe it or not. Yeah. Okay. So this was the very first sail I had. And you can see how much all of a sudden this batten, whoops, here. Is that, okay, here. You see the blue telltale hanging off the leech? That's not the batten. The batten is right here. And you can see how poked it is to up away from, you know, where it should be in line. This would indicate definitely an over trimmed sail when that batten, you know, similar to the main, if that batten is really hooked to weather, pointed at you, you know you're probably over trimmed. And that's when you look at that first, and then your telltale would tell you, you know, how close you are.
As a rule of thumb, and I was going to mention this in the beginning, I kind of forgot, is if you Google Flying Scot tuning guides, I'm sure all boats have tuning guides, but in the Flying Scot world, there's about 5-6 manufacturers of sails, everyone from North to Mad to Ullman to Quantum, and they all talk about the top batten max trim ever is put parallel to the boat's center line with a flying telltale, or maybe a little open. And there's only one guide that'll tell you a little bit hooked to weather with slightly stall. I mean, very few will ever advocate having a hooked batten and stalled telltale. They'll always say boat parallel the boat center line and or open. And that's what we tell our crews when Dave Rink and I will take people out on the Scots, and we always have new people on the boats crewing and, you know, having fun with us at club series and regattas. We'll say just crank it in until things parallel the boat center line, and that's max. And a lot of conditions, open a little bit is appropriate. So, but never hook like you're describing with a telltale that's not streaming.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. The last thing you want is for the jib to stall. We notice, especially on, you know, like Jim Hill on the J88, the J70, a lot of these sport boats, the Ultimate 20 also, that are relatively underpowered because the same sail plan takes them through the whole wind range from 0 to 30. And so that said, the last thing you want to do is give away anything. And so if that jib is over trimmed, the boat starts to feel horrible. Whenever the boat feels bad and feels really slow, first thing to look at is make sure the jib isn't over trimmed, because that'll be almost the biggest sticky point to an underpowered boat feeling bad, is that jib's going to probably be over trimmed. See what else we got on there, Sean.
It's a good rule of thumb after Thanksgiving when you let your belt out a notch. Usually similar advice. This might be a little gear shift towards the downwind. Back to I think we talked about this being a good vang. When I'm driving around in the Boston Whaler, when I get bored, I like to harass people and I say, vang patrol, it's Major Sean. Talk about the vang a little bit. Oh, you got that. Good.
I got that, yeah.
And you got to imagine the David Bowie music in the background, which I'm not going to subject you to.
So I saw this picture last night, and I don't know where it is. It almost looks like Kansas, right, Tim? Lake Perry. It's windy, obviously, and everybody knows in a Flying Scot, when it's windy, it's sketchy. The bow goes down in a hurry, and it does not pop up by itself very easily. So that said, the reason I pulled this picture out is not so much for the spinnakers or anything else, but it was for the boom vangs. And Sean had a question for me. We get in small little text chains every once in a while about the vang and stuff. And so this was a good example, I think, of using your boom vang downwind. There's a couple trains of thought here. An open leach like this, yes, it's windy, and you think, okay, it's going to help depower a little bit. It doesn't. It makes the boat really unstable. We learned this a lot, especially on J24s, on boats that really want to start rocking and rolling, and you can't control it. You have to over vang, and that helps control the rolling of the boat. Laser, same way. Laser, you start getting into that death roll, and there's nothing you can do about it. The easiest way to help control that is to over vang the main a little bit. And I use that term a little bit loosely. You don't just stand on it and call it a day. You just have the tendency to have it tighter than looser. The red, white, and blue kite here on the furthest away, obviously that vang is off way too much, probably because he's scared a little bit and he's trying to ease the boat up, but that's not going to help you. The pink, white, and blue here, the nearest to you, I think probably looks pretty close to right. I'm guessing that the middle boat, the all white kite, has his boom pulled in really hard. And so I'm guessing if he let his boom back out, his leach would be too open. Because right now it looks good in line with the mast. But that said, if that boom tip went out another 4 or 5 feet, I'll bet the leach of the main would be in front of the mast by quite a bit. So that's why I like this pink, white, and blue. He seems like he has pretty good boom tension. You can see the bend in the boom, first of all, indicating that obviously there's a lot of boom vang on. The Flying Scot doesn't like a lot of boom vang downwind because the mast is unsupported down here. So you do have to be careful with having it on too tight. Because what happens is, you think about a Flying Scot mast, it's very elliptical shaped. It's not just a round post. And so you put the boom out close to 80 or 90 degrees to the thin side of it, and you push it to weather quite a bit. Obviously the spinnaker pole's pushing against it, doesn't help either. So you have to, temper it a little bit, but I like to have a little bit more vang than not enough, for sure. That is the furthest boat, the red, white, and blue. There's no way I would ever want to look like that, sailing downwind. I don't want to give away that much trying to get downwind.
He's probably getting away with it because the kite's pulling him pretty hard, and he is planing. You can see their weights back, and that's kind of cool. But that easing of the under vanging, not only are you spilling power at the top, but the air goes up and starts to make side forces. Is that fair to say, Steve? Yeah,
and ultimately what happens is you end up trimming the boom in too much, right?
Right.
And so you notice their boom is, closer to a close reach position than anything, only because, it's laying against the shroud on the leeward side, and it's wide open. So he figures, okay, I'm playing the law of averages. I'm playing the middle of the sail. Whereas, the boat nearest to you, he's got the boom all the way out, perpendicular to the wind more, and just, chances are, I would guess that he's probably getting the best boat downwind, because he does have the weight further aft, and he does have more mainsail working for him.
Steve, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So what's a pretty key indicator of too much vang downwind?
So too much vang downwind, you will. So the top tail on the main is more an indicator of trim more than over vang. That said, that tail should be flying most of the time. You let the main out, sometimes it will just collapse around the leeward side for sure. But it's kind of a vision thing. The tail will help you, but your tail is more telling you your trim angle. It's not necessarily indicating how much vang you have. If you don't have a lot of vang on, then yeah, the main could be the leech could be very high and loose. But then again, if you're that far away from the wind, it might still be hooked around the leeward side. It's more an indicator of trim than vang. So like I said, it's a visual thing. Keeping that batten more in line with being parallel with the boom is closer to kind of what you want. You definitely don't want it really far out or away from the angle of the boom. That's just too much, because like I said, you're giving away, free horsepower. So, a little bit of, I don't know what you'd call it, but a little bit of angle away from you on those battens would be okay. Kind of an indicator of when you got the vang right. If the leech is wide open and that top batten is wide open, the 420 is probably going to invert that top batten when it's out too far like that, or the vang's not on. That's the indicator there on the 420, is when that batten is inverted and popped the wrong way. You notice you pull the vang on, all of a sudden that batten usually pops back into the position where it should be. So, it's kind of more foolproof than the Flying Scot, but otherwise, just trying to keep that more similar to the angle of the boom is kind of what you want.
When you ask high school sailors about the vang and the leech, they kind of they all sort of say the same thing. And even some college sailors, maybe Shana will weigh in on this. When they're going upwind, they crank the vang and they're not 100% sure what they're looking for, but it feels right. And they're going fast and they just mimic the senior, if they're a sophomore, or the All-American. If you're not an All-American, you just mimic somebody and you kind of run with it downwind. They're not really looking at the leech or the top batten. But I think that the thing that you got to look for in these bigger boats that these young people don't sail that often are sensitive. You can really see a difference in the leech. And on a laser, no one laughed, but I used to sail lasers in college, and the leech absolutely will. I mean, nowadays you can adjust your leech on the downwind. Back in the old days, you had no such ability, but the leech will be very flimsy and the boat's incredibly unstable, or the leech is very firm, the boat is dead as a doornail. And somewhere in between is the right setting. And there's the leech looks like it's got a little respiration to it. Looks like it's kind of breathing a little bit. Is that something that is an accurate thing to say, Steve? And Shana, are you around? She might have left.
Shana here?
I saw her earlier.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I think, a respirator is a good example. We have the terminology we use a lot of, the masks dropped out of the boom because you get suffocated, that your air gets, so stalled at certain points that, you need oxygen to survive. So that being said, yeah, the respirator, it's a big thing, letting that sail breathe and letting the boat be free. But you have to have all the horsepower that you can get, for sure. And,
Yes.
Last thing you want to do is be giving it away for no reason at all.
Just mimic the person that's kicking your ass is usually a good a good thing to do. Just look at their boom height, and then you can start to kind of dial it all in. Guys like Evan, who asked that question, they're light downwind, and they get the boat heeled to weather. They're just so fast that it's hard to feel the penalty of an overvanged main because they go so fast. You know, it's like it's not that obvious. Let's see, what other photo do we have in here? Those are all the photos that we pre.
What does Dave say?
Steve, how do you know how far to let out the mainsail on the downwind with a spinnaker? Yeah, that's a great question.
Okay, so I mean, everybody has different ways of doing it. When I sailed, I think even like, gosh, I don't know if Shana remembers or not, but usually I trim the spinnaker downwind. I stand up so that way my weight is in the floor of the boat and not on the tanks of the boat. Some people like it, some people don't. Jeff and Amy will not do that, except when they jibe. But I do it that way so I can trim the kite. And so that being said, the main is kind of off on its own because no one's really trimming it too much. So I'll let it go to a certain point and then pull it in a little bit. But you know, the general rule of thumb is always at, 90 degrees to the wind, but it's not, there's no easy answer. There's definitely a feel thing. When you're going dead down like those boats, I mean, you're not going to get backwind in the main. You almost can't ever let it out too far. I know the main sheets that I make for Jeff Linton, he specifically asks for a certain length. So that way he ties a knot in it at a certain point so that the boom just bounces off the leeward shroud. And so, that being said, that's kind of his go-to point. And then, from then on, just going to be a matter of where you want to, what angle you're going to sail at, as to, how much you're going to trim the main end from that.
I think that the question might be, well, if you're dead down, your boom can be pretty much slammed against the shroud, maybe an inch off of it so that you don't have metal on metal rubbing.
Right.
And on a reach, I think I under trim my main on a reach because the boat speed kicks up and the apparent wind moves so dramatically that I think Zeke Horowitz says most of us under trim our mains when we're reaching. And if it's medium light and you're in that reach mode, maybe you have a lot of chop. I've trimmed my main in before and it didn't feel any resistance or weight in it. And all of a sudden it felt heavy. I was trimming off the boom and I'm like, oh, damn, I think he's right. I think I'm one of those guys. I think there's a tendency to not realize that the kite creates a slot with the main. Maybe that's what Dave's talking about, Dave Ring?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah, when it's blowing, when it's, over 10 or 12, then we're going pretty deep, right? Pretty much dead down and you want to let the main all the way out. But when it's, 6, 8, blowing 6 to 8, and you've got to go a little bit hotter, right? And how do you know how far to let it out? Is it perpendicular to the wind? Is that what you're using?
No. In big breeze, it is. In less than big breeze, it's not, right? Because at that point, you're making apparent wind. When it's big breeze, you're not going as fast as the wind. When it's lighter air, you're going nearer to the true wind speed, right? So in that case, yes, you are, for lack of a better term, over trimmed a bit more. Obviously, if you get a bubble in it at all, because in lighter air you're doing more, not close reaching but broad reaching. So yeah, you're kind of finding that point where it's going to stall a little bit, or bubble, I should say, and then you're just kind of pulling it in from there. But like I said, when I'm standing up and I'm trimming the kite, I reach down every once in a while. And I just kind of find a happy medium for the main sheet. And basically just so it's not luffing. And half the time I'll head up a little bit and all of a sudden it'll luff. or the wind will change direction. So I have to reach down and grab, 2 or 3 feet of main sheet probably. So yes, I mean, Sean, I think is correct in saying, it's a tad bit, we say over trimmed. It's not like it's strapped, but over trimmed is probably better than under trimmed. Yes.
I just happen to, even when I'm fortunate enough to be ahead of somebody that's better than I am, I look back, I always laugh and I always say, oh God, where do I put my pole? Where do I put my main? Because, I just don't feel like I'm the last word on that. And often, the people that are consistently better than me are trimmed a little harder on their mains. And Zeke said it once, a couple times he said it. He said, hey, you guys are chronically under trimmed on your mains when reaching. And that could be when it's really light and you're sailing angles versus dead down, or you're planing and you go up and high enough to plane. And, and every once in a while I'll see this big, not luff, but a little backwinding in the front 2 feet of my main. And I'm like, damn, I think I'm giving away some power there. And I've told Dave a bunch of times when we used to sail together before he left me. And I thought, oh, damn, I think I'm giving away some stuff here in my main. And sure enough, I think I was. So that picture I got there, 4765, they're reaching.
So, I mean, and the good indicator of that is, we talk about that bubble, but that bubble can be produced by the kite being so close to the boat, right? So like you said, there is that slot effect. If the kite is over trimmed a little bit, it does push some of that air back into the main. You'd be surprised how much air goes under the foot of a spinnaker. It's crazy how much spills out the bottom. But yeah, as soon as you pull that sheet back, it's taking that entire pillow of air, if you will, and all of a sudden redirecting it into the backside of the main. So, there is that, variable of, being under trimmed and luffing the sail, or just simply squeezing that slot down with the spinnaker.
On that boat right there, 4765, at a glance, it's not that windy, but it's enough you can tell there's some wind out there. It just looks a little overvanged, mostly because the vang looks so straight to me and the leech looks a little stiff, but maybe in the main sheet's a little sagged. Is it possible, at a glance, you think that boat is overvanged?
I mean, probably only because, like you said, that angle is straight. We all have shock cord kind of pulling them forward so it's out of the cruise way. But yeah, I mean, not overly, I wouldn't say. I mean,
Gotcha.
the weight of the boom alone is
Yeah.
going to be enough,
Yeah.
for most of what we do in the Flying Scot. It's not until it gets, fairly windy that you actually have to apply boom vang, because the boom there's so much leverage out there.
Yeah, just looking at that shot though, the main sheet was slack, right? And the vang is always going to look like it's on tight, but look how slack the main sheet is, right? There's nothing on the main sheet essentially. So the main is getting sheeted right now by the vang, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, I think primarily, I think the main's being sheeted by the apparent wind, really. Kind of judging, they probably just set, if I had to guess. They don't look very situated.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing he's probably on the way to turning down and letting that main out probably. But yeah, I mean, it's, that vang would have to be pretty heavy in order to be on in that angle, that straight, like you said.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Five, 6, 7, 1. That rings a bell. Is that the North boat?
No.
That
That was 5787. That was Krembeek's old boat, or Paul's old boat.
That boat looks really low, pole back. The jib's dead, so they're dead down. Main's all the way out, pole's way far back. You can see it's almost over the guy hook.
Well, the big indicator is the jib, right? Jib's on center line.
Yeah, it's almost by the lee. Yeah.
Yep.
It's kind of an interesting. Do you look at the jib a lot when you're trying to figure out how low you are?
Absolutely. Yeah,
good,
a lot.
Good.
So just to highlight that, Steve, for So if the jib goes dead, right, there's no air in it keeping it out, then you're probably too low. Is that what you're
Your
saying?
max, yeah, that's your max down. And then all of a sudden it'll kind of pop over to weather and you're like, oh crap, okay. And, so that being said, like I said, I'm steering with my feet on the floor and the tiller between my legs. So that's all on me, and I kind of learned it a little bit through star sailing, just keeping the wind directly on the back of my neck. But when a puff hits or something changes, I have to move I shift my hips, which thereby take the tiller with it. So sometimes I'm a little bit slow when I do see that jib go slack like that. So that's why I try not to get it too slack, but hopefully it'll stay out. But that's kind of my telltale for going downwind. Absolutely, is using that jib, between loaded and just slightly unloaded. And then as soon as it falls over to weather, I go, oh crap, I got to get back the other way.
It's not doing anything for you, but it's giving you one hell of a nice indication of where you are.
Mm-hmm. That's my downwind telltale, if
Good.
you will. I don't use streamers on the shroud, so that's I go by the load on the jib.
Yeah, I love my downwind streamers. But when you're flying the kite, at the center, we don't use spinnakers very often. And so shifty at the streamers, the telltales are very, very handy, but man, you couldn't have a better telltale than that jib when you're going dead down, or low. So that's kind of neat. We're kind of getting near a finish point here. Does anybody have any burning questions as we sort of wrap up? I'm just going to take a look. I've been sharing my screen, so I haven't really been looking at people's faces on their little, the little. I don't even know what format I have now. Anybody have any questions? I see everybody is muted. Unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question, or even make a comment, or just weigh in any way you want.
Yeah, if nobody's going to ask a question, I'll ask one. I've asked this question a couple times to different people, and I'd like to ask you, how do you set your main halyard tension on a Flying Scot? What rules of thumb do you use? Do you use wrinkles? Do you use, how do you do it?
So were you texting with Sean on the other side of my text chain with Sean last week about all this? I don't know.
He started it. Dave Rink had that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So the main halyard it's kind of sticky. So anytime we go sailing, as soon as we leave the dock, you set the main halyard, you go, okay, no problem. You need to go sailing upwind with mast bend to get your halyard set right, in my opinion. And so I always change it once I go sailing. And so that being said, I go, and I told Sean this, I go a click or two tight, only because that way when I'm going upwind and my mast bends a little bit, I get the right tension on the halyard. The flip side to that is that as soon as you turn to go downwind, your mast straightens and your halyard goes a little bit too tight. But then again, I don't ask my crew to necessarily drop the halyard on the main, only because I feel like that's going to open up, a can of worms at some point. So I try to err on the side of being tight downwind, just because I know that it's going to look better upwind. And so I don't know if that answers you. And it's a matter of 1 or 2 clicks, literally. It's not a lot on the Flying Scot, I don't think, personally. But I will set it up maybe 1 click tight on my sail. And then when I'm sailing, it's going to look right. And then
How do you judge what's 1 click tight? What's that? What do you basically?
So if you're too tight, what's going to happen is that the luff tape at the very front of the sail that goes up the mast will get a hard spot. It will get, just like if you took a plastic bag from the grocery store, put it between 2 fingers and then pull those apart. What happens? You get these hard ridges 2 or 3 hard ridges right between your fingertips, right? So your mainsail is the same way. If you're 2 or 3 clicks too tight, you're going to see that hard ridge of material trying to stretch up the luff of the main. And so you're going to get one, or the luff tape will get hard first, and it will come straight out of the back of the mast. And then if you're too tight, you'll get an actual wrinkle in the sail material, 2 inches behind that. Because what that's doing is the sail is designed with luff curve, positive curve up the front of it. And so when you pull that tight, you're creating your distance between the tack and the head is lengthening, and it's forgetting about the luff curve. So the luff curve is just nullified. And so when you pull those 2 points tight, I don't know if I can, I'm probably not that good in the bonus. Anyway, you'll know when it's too tight, because you'll get those wrinkles up the luff, not horizontal wrinkles, but vertical wrinkles up the luff. Horizontal wrinkles are a whole nother thing. So the horizontal wrinkles will indicate your halyard being too soft, if you will. And one of the pictures that Sean shared with me the other day was Charlie Clifton. And, I just said basically, his halyard's just a little bit soft, but they weren't necessarily overbend wrinkles. So, chances are my sail probably looks that same way.
Yeah, that sail just had some wrinkles. I'm sharing my screen again. You guys see that? That boat that's 3 up. You guys see that with the mad sails? That there was more horizontal sails were creeping in, and Steve's comments were, hey, it's probably a click soft on the halyard, but probably perfect for the downwind. And so I guess you're saying you like to kind of go out there and get your halyard maybe a click too much with a little bit of up and down wrinkles along the luff. And then when you go upwind and sheet the sail, it looks perfect. You probably test it. And
it'll actually go almost soft. If you're in that sweet spot, it'll go almost soft, kind of similar to that sail you see right there. Basically, an inch or 2 of Cunningham makes that little scallop in the bottom go away, and then you wouldn't think anything of it. The other way to do that is to stop, let everything loose, and go 1 click tighter on the main halyard, and then go sailing again.
Yeah. So if you had your perfect way, and you had, Dave Rink in the boat crewing for you, someone that's, not gonna blow it, and you said, hey, take me down 2 clicks, would you go that route and soften the main halyard on the downwind, as long as you had time and it wasn't honking? Would you say, hey,
I mean, if it's wrong, or if it's getting light, sure, absolutely. If you see a trend in the weather, yeah, no problem. Loosen that main halyard. No, 2, like you said, 2 clicks.
Yeah. You'd rather have power than not power, especially off the wind.
Well, at that point, if it's getting light, your mast isn't bending when you pull the sheet on as much.
Therefore,
so
flat.
if your mast isn't bending, then you're not getting those wrinkles. So that's why you would have to go off a little bit. Lighter air, you're not bending the mast, so you're going to be a little bit softer on the halyard.
Sense.
So I think we had one other question about jib halyard tension. Do you want to talk a little bit about that on the Scot?
So the jib halyard tension it's a little bit more of a mixed bag, only because it kind of depends a lot on your sails that you have. For a long time, we all sailed with scallops in between each hank, or whether it's a piece of Velcro or a button snap or whatever, we'll call them hanks. Scallops in between there would indicate a nice loose jib halyard. That allows the draft in the sail, in the jib, to move aft, which on the Flying Scot provides a really fine entry, which is good for pointing. It's not good for making power necessarily. Once you kind of get those scallops out of the sail, you're rounding the jib in the front a little bit, but you're also tightening the leech a little bit. So, with every action, there's an opposite reaction. The main halyard is the same way. You know, in light air, you kind of go a click or two off, but it's going to change when your mast bends. Same thing with your jib halyard. When your head stay sags, everything changes. You pull the halyard up, and you got to realize that the leach of the jib is a shorter distance than the luff of the jib, right? When you pull a tape measure out and you measure from the head down to the clew, you get X amount. You measure from the head down to the tack, it's longer, correct? So anything you change on that head, it's gonna tighten the shorter distance first, okay? So in playing with that, you have to remember that you're not just affecting the luff of the sail, the scallops, the draft position, but you're also tightening the leach. So in that case, when you go up on the halyard, chances are you might have, if you left all things being equal, you'd have to go out on the jib sheet probably, because what you did is you inherently, you made the jib leach tighter by doing that also. So yes, you affect the front of the sail, but you're also affecting the back of the sail. So if you get that jib halyard too tight, first thing you got to look at is the leach. You may have cured the scallops, but you may have made the leach too tight. So, you definitely have to weigh both of those options. And, we learned that when it really got emphasized was on the sport boats because the sheeting angle is so short. The distance between the clew and the actual block on the boat is only like 4 inches. And so a little bit went a long way all of a sudden in changing jib halyard positions, because it was essentially you had to change your car position. The Flying Scot, luckily, you have 1.5 feet of distance, but when you're dealing with 4 or 5 inches, I mean it's a big dramatic change. So the Scot, you have a little bit more leeway, but you want to try to get that. The scallops are allowing the draft to move aft, making a flat entry. Good for pointing in flat water. You put a little bit more halyard on, you round the front of the sail, you're pulling, right? You're pulling 2 points. Again, same thing with the plastic bag. You're pulling those 2 points together and you're pulling the material in between those 2 points. So when you do that, you're pulling all of the material up into that straight line. So that's how you move the draft forward on any sail, right? When you pull the Cunningham on the main, what are you doing? You're pulling those 2 points further apart, sucking all that material that direction. The jib, same thing. You pull those 2 points further apart, you're pulling all that extra material up that direction. That's what's taking all the shape in the sail and pulling it forward, okay? You let it off, you increase the entry angle. You pull it on, you round it up, okay? You get the rounder, more powerful shape when you're sailing in waves or you want more power. But the flip side is you got to always keep your eye on the leach and make sure you're not over trimmed on it as well anytime you change the halyard. Or for that term, for the sake of argument, when you release it, if you release the halyard, then your leach is going to go looser. So you may have to actually click in on the jib sheet if you release the halyard.
So
then you release that distance.
So choppy conditions, and it's lightened up, let's say, and you're desperate for boat speed and power, you would think about easing your halyard on your jib and maybe your main as well, because you want the powerful shape, a round shape. You're desperate to get the boat rolling. And so if you, as the wind speed changes and the conditions change, if you need power, you ease off the halyard, rounder, more powerful. If you add halyard.
No, adding halyard will make it rounder. Adding halyard will pull the material to the front of the sail.
Yes.
If you pull the material to the front of the sail,
yes,
thereby flattens the back of the sail.
Right? Yes.
You only have this much.
Yep.
So what happens is if you pull it all towards this side, this is going to get flatter. Okay.
Yes.
This is all going to go. So by pulling those 2 edges tight, you're migrating all that shape. So wherever you migrate that shape to, the other side of it loses it. So when you pull the halyard tight, you round the front of it up, and you flatten the back of it up.
Right, which seems like that would be a less, I get it, the shape is migrated forward, just like Cunningham would bring the shape forward.
Right.
If I'm in chop,
Mm-hmm.
do I want that? I want it.
That's when you want it, because you can't steer to the narrow sheeting angle of a flat entry, right? If you have a flat entry on a jib, you can't steer up and down in the waves at all. You want a rounder shape so that way you can chug through any variances in the water.
That's
It's more forgiving, being tighter and rounder.
That's almost opposite of everything I've ever known about a jib halyard tension, to be honest. So you actually want a little bit more in the choppy conditions, a little bit
Correct. Correct. The only time you use a really loose entry on the jib, or a really flat entry, is flat water and pointing. Okay? You think about it, you know, that's when you want that angle of attack really narrow. Okay? When you get into waves and wind and puffs, you want more leeway. You want a bigger margin of error, if you will. And so you want a little bit more draft forward in that, because that's going to allow you to kind of manipulate and maneuver around a little bit more and not be so finite. With a straight entry, you're finite. You have to be locked in the groove, because those telltales are just, they're right on the knife's edge of, you know, when each one's going to break. You round that up, and all of a sudden you've got a bigger margin for error.
So your groove is wider when the shape is more forward?
Correct.
That is not obvious to me. Okay. I think Dave Rink is also a little confused on that. Okay. Okay. Because
yeah, it's like the opposite of what I've ever heard before, right? You know. So
no, everything should tell you that a fine entry, so a loose halyard, and I mean I can show you with keelboat sails all the time. So a straight entry is for flat water and pointing. It's not for choppy water, and it's not for drag racing.
Right, and so you're talking about the angle of attack of the jib relative to the wind. Right?
Correct.
That's what you're saying flat is, a flat entry.
Correct.
Right, okay. And you flat by having the draft back a little bit farther.
Well, yeah, think about it. Okay, so if you took a piece of plywood, right, you just put a piece of plywood up there, which is straight, okay? I mean, that is really hard to get right and keep flow on both sides, correct?
Sure.
You put a 2x4 in front of that piece of plywood, and all of a sudden the wind has to go around it, and it sticks to it, right? So it's the same thing essentially. You know, we wanted to put garden hoses in the luff of the sails, because what that did is that increased the entry angle of the sail to the wind. Okay, you think, oh, well, gosh, that adds a lot of drag. Well, no, it helps flow, because your entry angle broadens out and makes it easier to gain attachment. If you have a really narrow angle, it's really hard to keep that right. And you can't do it when you're in waves or really puffy conditions.
Yeah, like what I do on the U20 is I over trim or over pull the halyard on the U20 when it's lighter to force the draft forward in that sail so that I have a bigger groove.
Okay. Okay. Look at Tim. I'm in, I'm out. Yeah. Yeah, I have to confess that I had that kind of all wrong. Now you have been careful to say, hey guys, as you screw with the left tension, you might have to ease your sheets or trim your sheets. Now everybody would ease in a choppy situation, so I get that. But just the shape of it has everything to do with entry angle. And you're saying not you're saying, it sounds like everyone knows this, but Dave Rink and me is you're saying when the shape is a little more forward with left tension, your groove is a little more forgiving, and only when you have flat water could you tolerate. Which one could you, if you had flat water and you're like, I want to point this son of a bitch, I want to go high, what would you be thinking? Less
loose halyard, tight leech.
Yeah. Less tension because you could load the leech up and go.
Yeah.
Okay, and okay, that honestly, I had that wrong. I mean, I don't think I was 5 clicks wrong, but and I'm sure I have more problems than that. But you know, most of us will miss 2 or 3 puffs and be out of phase and can't start properly. But this, I guarantee you, I'll be maybe the next seminar. That's all we'll talk about is this concept of, because Cunningham is confusing. Because dang it, so Cunningham with the shape forward is actually a more forgiving shape because of the entry angle. Is that did I summarize that right?
That's true.
No, well, so I think we're mixing up our terms. Basically, the flatter the forward third of the sail. Okay,
Yeah.
in saying flatter, I mean less round.
Less
Okay,
left
less shape.
tension.
Right.
Less halyard.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's primarily for pointing, and it's not for power. Right. Power is a rounder, fuller shape. Okay.
You go rounder, fuller up front.
Up front.
Yeah.
Because then you're pulling, right? Then you think about it. You're using that shape to pull you forward, right? I mean, it has to do when you start connecting lines, highs and lows,
chord
which
lengths.
direction-
Yeah.
right? So you think about that when you round that up, you're pulling that arrow, if you will,
Yeah.
forward, pulling the boat, right? If you have a narrow entry, that arrow is all of a sudden pointing further to leeward. Okay, that's not good for making power. That's good for pointing, right? You round that up, you create the power, you change this angle of this arrow, and all of a sudden you're pulling forward because you need it to get through the lump or the chop.
Of the people still on the call, did you guys know this? I did not know that. I know Dave Rinksman, he jumped in there and said, yeah, man, that.
Understand it quite to that point, Sean, but I as he was talking, I was thinking about, like airplanes, right? The difference between say the cross section of a cargo plane wing versus a fighter pilot or a fighter jet wing. It's going to have a more bulbous area towards the leading edge of it. So it's going to create more lift. So that's one way to think about it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
More power, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. They're very shapy. Yeah, I get that. Damn.
You think about it. What do? You put the flaps down, right? You create as much shape in that wing as you can at low speeds, right? To create as much lift as you can. As soon as you're going fast, then you flatten everything out and you just start utilizing that, right?
Yeah.
That's when it's easy. But when you have to grunt or when you have to get it going, you have to have everything full, powerful, round. And then as you get up to speed and you got momentum, that's when everything flattens out and you just start squeezing. That flat entry.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Wow. That's good. I like that.
I mean, you should never, ever, when you Google this afterwards, you should never, ever see that a flat entry isn't for full pointing squeeze mode, right? Yeah. Not for generating power. Never, ever are you generating power with a flat section, right?
Yeah,
you want a full section to generate power.
I may have learned the most here. I know Dave Rink is taking notes, but
I wish what we need to do is find that there's literally that diagram of the foil shape and the high and the low and where that balances out and that arrow that is I don't even know, some coefficient of whatever. Yeah. And so that arrow changes as that manipulates, and it's crazy. I mean, it totally makes sense when you see it that way.
Yeah, I guess I was under the impression that the air would come in, it would enter, and if the shape was really far forward, it would it would turn that corner of that shape and tumble.
Right. It does, but when it tumbles, it creates that force forward, right? If it's just going along the wall, it's not doing anything. It's just getting on and getting off as soon as it can.
So a more forgiving groove is one with some left tension, generally speaking. If you're worried about chop and slop, that's another reason to have that on. And for the squeezing, pointing, that's when you would lay off luff tension, when you can tolerate.
Right. And it's not like it's not a mode, right? I mean, you don't all of a sudden say, I'm going to lift off this guy, let the halyard off. No,
Right,
no, 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 no.
right.
Don't do that. You know, it's just a matter of your overall, wind conditions and sea state. Okay. Here on Lake Norman, it's more or less, unless Evan's out there on his, jet ski creating wakes for us, we can get by with a really fine entry because, the boat just, flat water, you don't care. You just sail flat and you just sail high and there's nothing to impede your progress. Something impedes your progress. Yeah. You gotta create some more oomph, make it get some more power.
Yeah. Well, that's huge.
Yeah, kudos to Dave Lawrence for asking that question, man. I'm glad you did, Dave.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. Yeah, what did he say? To build on Dave Rink's question, how do you recommend determining proper jib halyard tension, which we're talking about luff tension, and that's creates the shape forward and has a flattening effect, opens the leach, and that way you can trim it harder. Is that fair to say when you add Cunningham?
Yeah, you don't want to go crazy with the scallops. You just want a little bit of soft tension in between each one. And I think your new sails actually have the bronze snaps, the metal ones. So they should all be equal. And so you're going to want, just a little bit of free material in between. No more than probably a finger to a finger and a half of scallop. Maybe one finger of scallop from the head stay to the furthest part that the sail is away from the head stay.
So
but that's, to give you a ruler.
420s, they don't have scallops. So like, I kind of just play it like if I feel like I'll like kind of feel the jib tension and like I'll just kind of guess because I don't know, I just kind of feel like I know, but I don't know any real way to determine what's right.
And so on the 420, you can't really adjust it. I mean, you can if you undo the little white line and you change the tension, but with an internal head stay, because the head stay is part of the sail, it's kind of a fixed deal. So without adjusting those 2 points, you're kind of stuck with that. That's what you're affecting there is you're actually affecting rake because your sail is your head stay. The Flying Scot's a little bit different because your head stay is separate from the sail. So what you're doing is you're judging it by the, not the softness of the material, but the amount that it looks loose along the luff. You're going to get some little bit of horizontal, kind of fins coming off. You just want a little bit of those, not a lot. And then obviously the older the sail is, the more halyard you're going to want on it because the draft is migrated to the back no matter what. Mainsails, jibs, it doesn't matter. The older the sail, you have to err towards being tighter on the halyards because you're trying to put that draft back where it's supposed to be in the sail, where it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, after not being abused.
I know we're going overtime here, but I think that the luff tension Cunningham thing has been is kind of hot item. I know it is for me. Do you see the screen?
Yeah, look right there. Halyards effect. There you go. See that?
Yes.
So
yeah, this is great. I've never understood this before today. I've seen this diagram before, and thank you so much for explaining it.
Okay, so the one thing that I would add to this is that you draw. Let me see. Can you see me or no?
I can.
I don't have it. Anyway.
It's possible that I just leave it alone like that, maybe.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, let me see if I can get on. Well, anyway, okay, so that diagram there, the straight line that they have, the piece of plywood coming off, right? Draw a 90 degree and a line 90 degrees to that. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? So go to the center of the line, basically, and you draw a line 90 degrees, perpendicular to that line. No, to the straight line. Go to the middle of it.
Oh, like that. like, oh, I see what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
this.
yeah.
Like that. Yeah, the
Yep,
lift vector.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that 90-degree line, think about it.
It's pulling you forward more.
Pulling you forward, correct. That's
Son.
giving you pull through the water. The
Jesus.
other one is allowing you to be closer to the wind. So the one's generating power, right? And the other one is just producing height, more likely to stall, right?
Yes.
That's like we were talking about, that piece of plywood. You know, it's hard to get right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, this line perpendicular to this line they have drawn is effectively your entry angle of your wind. The wind comes in right here on my cursor, and then it comes in and goes around the back of the sail.
Right.
And so this perpendicular line is this thrust vector, if you will, the lift vector.
Yeah,
and when the shape,
of that, I forget what it's called. Yeah, you get the point. Yep.
yeah, if string is pulling on the sail this way, otherwise it's pulling more to the side on this one, and little more forward on this one. And what's the downside to too much luff tension? And that the air would become detached.
Yeah, so it gets to the point, if you look down the yellow box with the sail A and sail B, the mains. If you look at those real quick, it's kind of an exaggerated example. No, the next one.
Over here.
No, the down.
Down.
Right there. That yellow box.
Okay, I'm gonna hit that. See what happens.
No. Sail. Did we get it?
It says
That
sail
one right
A
there.
and sail B.
Yeah, in the middle.
Oh, over here, yellow box.
Yeah.
I see the shaded.
Yellow box.
Yes.
Yeah, that yellow box. Yeah. Okay, so that's an exaggerated example. Okay, so sail A is actually the right sail. Sail B is when that halyard is on really tight. Okay, so it's like what I was telling you. So granted, this is a main, but it's the same principles, right? You pull all that sail area forward on sail B, and it flattens the back of it. Okay. So when you flatten the back of that, you're taking a little bit of that power out of it, right?
Yeah.
So that you're getting more pull and less height. Sail A, which has all that return in it and the draft further back, that's allowing that leech or your rudder or your flaps to then rotate,
Drive
right?
the boat. Yeah.
Allowing you to sail higher in the wind.
Yeah, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it, and it's a little counter to what I thought I knew. And
so yes, you can go too much because you're giving away somewhere else.
Sure.
So that's where you can't just pull it on and +2, right?
Yeah. Now the B sail is inappropriate because it's too much, and but you can see the effect of it. The positive effect of too much left tension is that the leech would open up, which would allow you theoretically to trim it harder. If it's one of the, is it fair to say that if you add Cunningham to the main, you'll have a flattening effect, which is depowering, and the main is the leech is opening a bit, which means you can click it on 1 or 2 clicks harder.
Yeah.
And
but
to a limit.
Pulling the Cunningham on and pulling the outhaul tight do virtually the same thing.
Okay.
Because you're just taking all that material and you're starting to stretch it to where it's not made to be.
Did you say sharding? Yeah. So you have a flattening effect. Of course, the outhaul is more like the bottom third, and the luff tension is more. Yeah. Damn it, dude. That is, and it's to a limit. I mean, we can't go crazy with this, like anything.
Everything in moderation.
Damn, that's the most valuable part of this entire lecture has been this last 30 minutes for me, because I thought I knew this, but I knew I didn't know it well. Brink can tell you, I speak on this very lightly because I don't know. Most of us stay the hell away from Cunningham because we're afraid of it, and we don't know exactly what it does.
And it is the last tool. It is.
Yeah.
It's the last tool in the bag.
And if anybody's curious, what I Googled is I Googled Cunningham luff tension to get these nice pictures. And damn, that's the next thing for me to be playing with, because I had this kind of wrong. I mean, the truth is I don't mess with my Cunningham much, and I don't like to screw with halyard tension that much. But I will say, when it gets choppy for most of us, we start to let off our halyards. And that's not such a great idea.
Yeah.
And I think what we think we're doing is adding depth. That's what we think we're doing, is adding depth. And yeah, depth by easing the outhaul. You add depth by easing the sheets, adjusting your sheets. But I think the sail shape, the location of the max depth is what we're talking about here. And that's pretty breakthrough stuff. Excellent. Is everybody ready for me to wrap this up?
Yep.
Because I think we've been going a while, and there's a point where
2 hours is about the max for us in meetings online at work anyway.
Well, I could talk about this for 5 hours, but
Thanks again, Steve, for doing this. Really appreciate it. It's been fantastic.
No problem. No problem at all.
Yeah, it really a big deal, and there's something in there for everyone. Certainly for me. So I appreciate everybody's attendance, and I appreciate everybody's good questions, because Steve told me early on, I'd like to take it wherever people want to take it, and that's the name of the game. So pretty darn wonderful. I appreciate everybody, and thank you very much, Steve.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
All right, see you next Wednesday. And if we're lucky enough, maybe Steve will approach another topic. And if you saw the invitation email to this thing and you hit return or reply and say, hey, next one, could you discuss drumhead tension? Maybe that will be the topic. And but hey, maybe the next one's on luff tension and Cunningham, and we talk about that for 45, 50 minutes. Who knows? But really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, and hope to see you soon. But we'll have another one of these coming up shortly.
Hey, Steve.
All right. Thanks, John. See you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you.
Hi, Sean.
Bye, Evan.